Good
You never know.
morning. Good morning. I know. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Well, it's saying we're live, so hopefully we are live. We should be live now on LinkedIn and also on YouTube. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. If you're watching us, good morning, Ruth.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody. We hope you're so well today. We're happy you're here.
Ruth, that's got to be the most energetic good morning response I've ever had on one of these LinkedIn lives. But I knew you were going to bring the energy.
We're like, are you awake out there?
Yeah. Bearing in mind that both of us, so if you're joining us live, please do put a good morning in the comments so that we can see that you're watching, and tell us where you are in the world and how your week's been, how the weather is. Both myself and Ruth are in hotel rooms, would you believe, in different parts of the globe. But it is what it is, and we wanted to jump on and have this conversation because it's a really important one in terms of women's development programs. I feel that companies have been investing in women for a long time.
Yeah,
And some stuff's worked, but a lot of stuff maybe hasn't worked. And I think we're going to get into maybe why that is, right?
definitely.
So I've got with me the incredible Ruth Penfold. And I want to say that we met during the lockdown. The infamous lockdown is when
Yeah,
we first met. And there was just something about you, Ruth, your energy that I loved. But in terms of, I'm going to try to do a really sort of like brief background. But your background is kind of like people and HR and coaching,
yeah,
and really at quite a senior level as well, which is one of the things that I love. Because sometimes when I have people come to me and ask, do I know a coach or a mentor or whatever, I always like it, especially if these are women in particular trying to get into those high levels. I always like to refer them into people that have really done it themselves, right? Have actually
yes.
lived it and know what some of the challenges are. So your background is, kind of like all things people. You are an accredited coach, which not everybody is that say they do coaching, which I think is brilliant. And then, and you're also a yogi, but in the latter years, you've really leaned into the coaching side and built programs for both teams and executives in organization, and also women leading in a really authentic way. So just tell us a little bit about your journey and how you've gotten to here, and why Bloom and Women Who Lead.
Yeah. Thank you. And thank you so much for having me. This is such a pleasure because seriously, when I met you, Cheryl, I was like, oh my gosh, I love this woman. And it was great that we got to collaborate
It was
just a little bit.
mutual.
Yeah, just a
Yeah.
little bit before. But yes, okay, I'll try and keep it brief on the like journey story, and then you can double click if you want to double click anywhere. But let me just say, for a really long time, didn't have a clue who I was, but I didn't know that, right? And I gradually awakened to myself at the age of 30. I'm now 45, and then I set out on my own quest for authenticity to become who I actually was created to be, right? Which isn't easy for any human, but it's really not easy for women in the world that we're in. So I then worked my way up the ranks, and every time I sort of took a new role, I'd be like, okay, great. Now, and as I was taking myself into an environment within myself where I was starting to feel this sense of thriving, I then became curious, well, hey, if I can do this, and let me say with the TLDR, the 20s, toxic marriage, not thriving, right? Like bad, right? If I can take myself to a place of thriving and joyfulness, and by joyfulness, I mean like walking in alignment with myself, then maybe I can do it in the companies that I'm in. So I was in recruitment at the time, and I could have stayed that path. That was with Shazam, the consumer app. And I stayed until the point where we exited to Apple. And at that point, people wanted to hire me for the same job for talent. And I was like, yeah, but I don't feel like I can really make decisions here. And I feel like decisions are being made for the humans in this organization that I don't necessarily think are in our best interests, or even in the commercial best interest either. So I was like, okay, well, maybe I need to go there. So that's what I did. And I made that leap to, hello, I can see a little comment going.
Hi, Niha Rika, who's joining us from Oman today, actually, because I was talking to her earlier in the week. Yeah, so we're completely
yeah.
very international today.
Yeah, love it. And so then I became VP People. And then my next role after that was Chief People Officer. VP People was with a machine learning startup, so also tech. And then the next role was with a BP owned company, right? So I then operated in senior executive roles within, startup, scale up, corporate. Yeah. And I gave it a good go at thriving in those roles. Like, let's be honest, I gave it a good go and I had balance. And the big thing that I'd done without realizing what medicine that was going to be for myself was also became a yoga teacher in the middle of my time at Shazam. And so I didn't realize that I was kind of almost like preparing the vessel for like what was to come. And that was helping me to harness my energy and show up more fully in those spaces. But I had this calling towards coaching for a long time. I had this sort of whisper, tapping on my shoulder, right? And that was when I left BP, that was because I had essentially done my coaching qualification and I was like, okay, right, let's take this leap now. And then just real quick, because you asked about what led me into the programs that I've created. So initially I started to work and create, and I still coach everybody and I still create programs for everybody in leadership development. But I started to do programs around how to create a culture of innovation. And I started to coach different leaders. And then as I was coaching men and women, I was noticing a difference. And I was noticing that the men were much more able to get out of their own way and just just do the thing. And the women, we procrastinated and we shrank and we knew how to do something. We prepared how to do something, but we didn't do it. And I recognized those patterns as what I'd experienced myself. And that was the point in time where Bloom was born. And that was my first leadership accelerator for women, because I was like, hang on a minute. I had figured this out. So I know the strategy of how to take up space here. I can help them do that. And I'll pause there, Cheryl, because it has evolved over the past 3 years, but maybe we can come back to how it's evolved.
Yeah. And I love that because, and we're going to really get into this because I think, you've kind of started to hit the nail on the head there in terms of, you were leading a program and noticing that there was a difference. And as much as, and I've been involved with Women's Network since like 2009, right? A long time ago. And sometimes we don't always like to admit that there are certain differences because of, whether people feel it's nature or nurture or the way that we've been socialized or whatever it is. But we know that on a general level, we do see differences. And sometimes people put it down to, a lack of confidence or the challenges that women have faced, so one of the things I've always said is sometimes when you look at the challenges women have faced in boardrooms and meeting rooms for years, that can often beat them down. So by the time they're ready for that boardroom, they've had a lot of, kind of being criticized, having to prove their worth, all of that kind of gets up there. So I love the fact that you've recognized that there needed to be something different. So good morning. So quick shout out to Niharika Niha, who is in Oman. So Niha used to be based in the UK. In fact, Niha is just a global citizen.
Yes, I'm a global citizen too.
Yeah, exactly. You absolutely are. We must talk about that. Whether you've seen any differences between the women that you work with in different organisations. But Niha, thank you so much for joining us. I want to. So let's just get into this thing of. Why do some women's programs not work? And you, I think, have almost like hit the nail on the head there because you've talked about that you were working with women and men in terms of like, exec leaders, but you noticed that there was something different. So do you think that maybe, is it a case of some of the women's development programs have maybe been almost like a lift and shift of just, okay, this is what we do for all leaders, so let's just do the same thing with women? Is that part of the problem, do you think?
Definitely yes. And actually in fact, I even forgot, one of the things that made me actually go, hang on, I need to be part of fixing this, is I was approached by a man who was asking me to refer women leaders because he wanted to him for his programs, because he wanted to teach them how to be confident, to teach us how to be confident. And I'll be honest with you, that made me kind of mad on the inside because I was like, hang on just a minute. Like, if you don't know, if you can't feel the context that we're sitting in, then you don't really understand. Like, you can teach us the theory of confidence. You can teach us the theory of leadership, but you actually can't understand what is holding us back, and the myriad of these tiny little microscopic moments, some big, some small, actually, like depending, of moments that we are told how to be as women, and the moments where we're chastised about what we're wearing and how we're speaking, and, you know, whatever, right? So the average woman arrives into her leadership role, to your point, bracing for impact, right? And there are outliers who don't arrive like that. But for most of us, we're holding our breath and we're putting on a performance to try to be who we think the people that we're sitting with need us to be, because that's how the world trained us. And this isn't about men versus women, by the way. It's just the patriarchal structures that we operate in, which means that we've all got these prescribed roles. And this is the one that's being prescribed to women, and it's upheld by men and women now. And that's the part that we need to break down.
Yeah. Honestly, as you said, when you said the bracing for impact and hold your breath, I literally, like, that felt, Ruth, I kid you not when I say that felt like you'd kind of almost just summarized, like, I would say my last 10 years of corporate, you know, where I was in those boardrooms and things. That's exactly what it felt like. Almost like every time you walked into that boardroom, say, or that meeting room, you were kind of like literally bracing, you know, putting on your armor almost and going into that room
every time. And then whatever I experienced as a white woman, it's not even 10 times, a million times harder for you as a Black woman, right? And like the fully bracing. And I think at least as a white woman, though, I can empathize with you and and understand that if it's this bad for me, I just know that it's this bad for you. But for this man, and I appreciate the allyship, I appreciate what he was trying to do, but it made me realize that it has to be women bringing this stuff out, and it has to be us who are able to say, hang on a minute. But somebody said that, I heard a great quote the other day, and I don't know who it was, but it was something like, if you speak to a fish and you say, how's the water? They'll say, what's water, right? Like, because fish don't know that they're in water. They're just swimming in it, right? And I think that the average woman in the workplace is a fish. And I mean that in the greatest love and respect, because I've been the fish too. And it's actually taken me, Cheryl, working with women over the last 3 years in the way that I have, to really see the context. I didn't even see it when I launched my first program fully, because now I'm like, okay, but hang on, this shows up here and here and here and here. And it keeps, like, the pattern matching now has helped me to see the matrix in a way that I didn't see when I was coming out of my role as an operator.
Yeah. And I think, you know, you said about being a yogi, and before we went live, you said about being more spiritual, and you also talked about things having to be more cyclical for women.
Yes.
And if we have time, we can get into the gender differences, but just tell me about the importance of that. And I have a lot of friends that are very, you know, kind of very sort of like appear to be very sort of like commercial and business like, but definitely are getting more onto the kind of spiritual, getting in touch with, you know, kind of purpose, meaning, and things very deep inside. Tell us why you think that side of us, you know, our spirituality, our soul, if people want to look at it like that. Yeah. Why do you think that is so important for leaders to maybe connect with, and particularly for women leaders? Just talk to me about that.
Right. Well, so in my first programs and in my one-on-one coaching, what I learned how to do really well was support a woman to begin to love and value herself and start to take that out. And I saw great results, like women earning tens of thousands more than they were earning before. Job titles are improving, you know, all these sorts of things. But again, this pattern matching that's deepened over the last 3 years really was like, hang on a minute. Yes, as women, we can learn to love and value ourselves in the context that we're operating in. But what's been taught to us from really, really early doors in our lives is to actually mistrust and to hate woman, right? To think woman is wrong. And so we are socialized as young people that women can't be trusted. And, you know, we have to make sure that the women are safe, and like that we're trained not to have really our own agency too. But when I say hate woman, I also mean like we're taught to ignore and disregard our cycles. By the way, this isn't some sort of sinister plot. It's just maybe we didn't know that then, but now we do, so we can do different, right? We're taught to ignore our cycles. We're taught to detest our cycles, actually, and the very nature of what it means to be. But the truth is that when we're disconnected from our cyclicality as women, regardless of whether we're bleeding or not, when we are cyclical beings. We are lunar beings. Men operate in solar energy. They wake up, testosterone peaks, they burn with the sun, it goes down at the end of the day. Women, we change throughout the month. And each week we are a different, I call them archetypes, and I've turned them into archetypes in the program so that we can really embody her and love her, because each one of those different facets of who we are is powerful and beautiful. But we have been taught, because we're modeling ourselves against men, what we're learning is, well, hang on a minute, they're like that and I'm not like that. So something must be fundamentally wrong with me because I change, because I feel different now. And last week I felt radiant. This week I feel quite critical. Now, the magical thing is that when we learn that critic that creeps in our luteal phase, it's actually an energy of discernment. It's actually an energy of us, because I can guarantee it. What gets on your nerves in that phase is getting on your nerves the rest of the month. You're just probably gaslighting yourself out of how bad you actually feel about it. And if though you are a woman who doesn't have a cycle right now, that's okay. We cycle with the moon. I kind of see her like a big sister in the sky, so that then we can, because I honestly believe it's like for women, it's like ignoring our circadian rhythm when we don't honor our cycle and learn to build a relationship with these different parts of ourselves. So the program that I've created today is built on 3 foundations. One is cyclicality, which we've just talked about. And that also, by the way, means learning how our nervous systems are wired, and that it's different to how men are wired, just slightly, but enough to make us quite different. The strategies that I've always taught, because, I did manage to make great big leaps in my career and operate and show up fully in those spaces. The other part, though, is sisterhood, because I actually believe that part of what's going to shift the energy of women in this world is when women finally stand together. And because at the moment we're all kind of pitted against each other, and many women will tell us, Cheryl, and you must have heard it too, one of my most challenging bosses has been a woman, right? And that doesn't mean women are bad leaders, but it does mean that we are operating like this environment for us is not bringing out the best in us. And so my little hypothesis is that if we bring women together and we learn to love ourselves truly inside out in this way, and really then integrate leadership skills into that living intelligence, then we will actually then be part of bringing a little bit more love and a little bit more energy, and a little bit more aliveness into the world that we're missing right now.
Ruth, oh my God, there's so many things you said. I was like, oh my gosh, this is the thing. I don't think I've ever spoken to somebody when it comes to like women's leadership or women's programs that have even talked about cyclicality, the cyclical nature of women. I hear, these are conversations I hear a lot, talking about things like, perimenopause, menopause, fasting, how you can do things like that. And out there in terms of when it comes to health and well-being, people are talking about the impact of hormones and cycles on, your nervous system, stress, your energy levels. I don't hear it talked about so much in the workplace. And, and it's literally like having this conversation, it's like ding, ding, ding. And I'm kind of like, even a lot of the focus around menopause and perimenopause and all of that. And I get it, because that's its whole other beast. But you're so right in terms of understanding the cyclical nature and hormones and all of that, how that impacts how we show up in the world. It's really important. It's super, super, super important. But I think you're the first person that's ever mentioned it. And good morning to Junior Beeman. 3 years coaching, and I have to say, women as clients are my favorite, of course. And I love the mention of yoga and mindfulness. So important. Junior is amazing. Ruth, I must connect you
Yes,
offline with Junior because he's
I would love
just
that.
incredible. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, for real. You mentioned a couple of things as well. You talked about the hating of woman, or the place that women have. There's a brilliant book. I don't know whether you've come across it. I'm a massive book nerd, but the book is called The Authority Gap by Marianne Sieghart.
Oh,
So Marianne
nice.
Sieghart, was the deputy editor for the Times for like many, many, many years. It's an amazing book, but called The Authority
Nice.
Gap, and really just talks about exactly as you're saying, Ruth, in terms of all of the kind of micro experiences that women have, and the fact that as a society, especially as a Western society, we just don't think that women have got the goods, right? That's almost the
We
starting
just don't.
position.
We just don't.
Yeah.
And it's coded into many of our families. Like literally, it's like
Yeah.
well, dad sits at the head of the table for many of us. I know that might not be
Yeah.
everybody's experience, but like
Yeah.
even like I come from a family of miners, right? And I was from an early age, it was like, no, your granddad got the meat and we got the gravy because we couldn't afford to have,
Yeah.
right? So literally, like if you think about it like that, in many different ways, we are just being taught that men are the ones that we need to look to for decisions, and some of us start to
Yeah.
like some of us manage to kind of break free from that and realize actually I can
Yeah.
have agency here and I should have agency
Yeah.
here,
Yeah.
all these sorts of
Yeah.
things. But it really
Yeah.
is keeping women stuck, and that's why, by the way, Cheryl,
Definitely.
also much higher numbers of women are burning out in our world right now, because we're taught to have this energy of caretaking of everybody else, which means we're trying to almost like wife our workplaces. Like, oh, well, hang on a minute, so-and-so needs this, and cognitive burden, and so-and-so needs that. And, oh, and what about this over here? And I've got to figure out, do you see what I'm saying? And you're nodding because you know
100%.
it's true, don't you? We're trying to wife our workplaces.
Yeah. Well, I love that phrase. You must have picked that up in the States, right? You got,
Do you know,
that is just such
I
an
literally just said it today. I literally just
I,
said it today.
I've been talking about this a lot, and if people follow
I'm
my
writing it
content on
down though,
LinkedIn,
by the way, everyone. I'm writing it down.
there's
What?
there's a wifing our workplace. I
Yeah.
literally was having this in conversations yesterday with employee resource group leaders. But there's
Yeah.
another phrase that I use as well, which is that we, particularly when it comes to the dynamic sometimes in the workplace, women and men, we baby the men. That's the term that I
Yes.
use. We
This is so
baby
accurate.
men.
So accurate.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, because
And
also
the toll that takes then on us, right?
it's massive. Also, like, I mean, literally, look at this psychologically. If you feel like you're not enough, and if there's at least one area where you can feel like you're enough, like, oh, but you need me to do that for you, then like we're getting a kick out of. And this is the thing. I mean, the way out is not, by the way, victimhood and oh, poor us. The way out for women is, hang on, what's my role here? What am I getting out of being this small? What are these little almost like sick kicks, let's just say, like that I'm getting, like, oh, but he needs me, the workplace needs me, if I don't do it nobody will do it, that means I matter. And that is the mindset that's keeping us stuck. So this is the thing, we need this whole holistic reinvention of ourselves and how we're showing up in the workplace, that's not sitting in our victimhood and poor us and we've had it rough and blah blah blah. That's really empowered and that's really like, hang on, what was our role here? And now let's change it.
Yeah. Do you know, I think we sometimes, and I talk to a lot of like women networks and women network leaders, and, Neha and Junior, they've both been, have started and led networks for numbers of years. And I sometimes almost like see a similar dynamic as well with people that are maybe from, other sort of like, marginalized or underrepresented groups, almost like getting that validation. If the validation doesn't come from somewhere else, then getting that validation from, being the go-to person, the person that, everybody comes to with their problems, or is kind of helping to sort things out. And obviously there's real value potentially in that, especially for employee network leaders. But it often, as you say, it can lead to the burnout because we almost we kind of overinvest in that side of us. That's the only side, that kind of nurturing for others, etc. Sometimes at the expense of our own well-being, and also then sometimes the delivery of us in our main role or our day job, depending on the setup as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really, here's the thing, like we were blessed with these big, beautiful hearts. Sometimes we use them in ways that aren't necessarily in our best, in anybody's best interest, honestly.
Yeah,
So the energy that I would like to see whether I can support us to shift into is one of discernment, is one of
yeah,
actually, like, no, we don't have to stop caring and stop caretaking and stop feeling like we're bringing our heart. And by the way, hands are an extension of the heart. Haha.
hmm,
So, like, the work we do literally is coming from heart energy, right? And I don't want that
yeah,
to change, but it has to shift into this energy of discernment. And actually, the amount of times that we are clearing up after others, when actually what we're doing is robbing that person of their own medicine that they should be taking, and actually keeping them stuck by disabling them, by thinking that we need to help them figure that thing out.
yeah,
All
yeah,
the while,
yeah,
by the way, not looking in our own backyard and not looking at our
yeah,
own development and not being
yeah,
honest about the totality of our lives. And
yeah,
one of my yogi things is to be prepared to see the truth of things, right? And that sounds simple. It's seriously hard, because to be prepared to actually see the context that you sit in, the matrix, if you will, even when it's hard, even when it means that sometimes you have to say no's that break your heart, whether that's
hmm,
personal or professional. It's realizing, it's being prepared to truly witness the truth of yourself and the truth of the environment that you're in.
yeah,
Because really, we are doing ourselves a disservice by staying in environments that cause harm if we don't have the power to shift them, right? But
absolutely.
discernment is what gives us the power, because then we're like, hang on, what am I, like, that's the moment where we get to say, okay, well, actually, I feel like I can bring my heart here, and we can actually, if
Yeah,
I can recruit some others, we can shift it. Or actually bringing my heart means saying, this is toxic for me. I'm not getting to be all of who I am here. And
mm,
that's okay. That was my medicine to learn from this
yeah,
experience. But
yeah,
now let me see if I can bring my heart out in a more high integrity way, in a different
yeah,
dynamic.
yeah. I love this. And I love that, for anybody out there that maybe is, doing women's programs or managing a women's ERG or a women's network, I would definitely ask you to think about whether your programs have these elements of them. I mean, obviously, if they don't, you need to get in touch with Ruth, right? That's because Ruth will absolutely bring that. Um, and then, good morning, Amina, as well. Amina, yes,
I love
Susu
that comment, by the way,
Udeshakiri.
Amina. Yeah,
Put down your cape and use it as a blanket for a bit. Absolutely,
seriously.
and yeah, and encouraging, each other to do that. And something you talked about, Ruth, was sisterhood. And I think sometimes, in terms of the sisterhood and the moral support, it's when you see people that are kind of constantly living in that space of, serving to others in a way that maybe is detrimental to themselves. Just lost an ear.
Right.
Encouraging them to kind of sort of like do that, as you say, that discernment, having that discernment around what things need to be done and what doesn't need to be done. There's a great quote that I came across. I'm going to say maybe towards the start of the year. It's something like, you don't have to set yourself on fire to keep others warm.
Oh, yes. I love that.
Right?
I love that.
Yeah, and I think as women we do a lot of that, right? I
We
think
do.
so. I think
We do.
recognizing that in programs. You talked about sisterhood. So do you
Mm,
bring that? Do you bring the element of sisterhood into your women who
yes.
lead? Like, do you talk? Just tell
Yes.
us a little bit about that, because I love a lot of people that are maybe listening to this will recognize, and it's not often something we talk about: female competition, what that looks
Right.
like in the workplace, etc., and the opposite to that, which is sisters. So just talk to us about that a little bit, Ruth.
Yeah. So it was really important for me to reinvent my program in that way, right? Over the last few years, I've run a lot of workshops and cohorts of women, and I see the power when we come together. But
Yeah,
fun fact, a lot of us are like, join a group. I don't want to. I'd rather just do my own thing, because we've learned that too. So, but the bet that I'm placing is that, so where the way I'm creating Women Who Lead, and the first cohort actually launches in June of 2025, depending on when you're watching this, depending on how long it lives on the internet. And the way that I'll structure it with companies too, and I'm just about to begin the first company program too, is that the women are in groups of ideally 7, right? Now, sometimes the women will all join together, but this number is special because it's the size of really a well-functioning executive team. And also something I just don't enjoy in coaching is when we create codependence with the coaching client. Like I am more about like, if we're going to evolve as women, codependence is something we have to tackle, right? And the way that we do that is by so what I'm creating is deeply empowering so that the group of women become the sisterhood that they need moving forward, who they can then almost like coach each other and move and evolve. But that does mean everybody leaning in to create this safe space together, and I know it's very hard to create a safe space, but that does mean though, like no space can be truly safe with other humans in it, right? So like, how do we then make sure that we're having healthy conflict and actually learning and growing together and evolving together? Because what we've been doing so far isn't getting us. It's got us far, but it's not going to get us. It's not going to get us to fully embody all of who we are. It's not going to get us to fully embody our feminine energy as well as our masculine energy. And by the way, everybody has feminine and masculine energy in them. But in my own career, I'm very aware that what I had to do was consciously dial up feminine energy, which when I first started realizing what it was, actually felt quite unattractive to me, because I was like, what, you want me to be like slow and cool and, you know, like moony? That doesn't feel like me. I feel like the fire. I feel like the sun, because I'd learned how to masculine energy so well, right? And so, but actually to learn the energy of receiving, which by the way, I think I'm 45 now, having been trained for 40 something years to just drive and do, it's not going to happen overnight that we suddenly learn how to receive as women, right? As anybody, if we're not used to doing it. Some people are really good at receiving. We're usually not those people. Like, no,
I love it.
For you.
You know, I just love that. I think there are so many nuggets that people can take away from this conversation. I've got one more thing that I'll maybe ask you, which is maybe around Gen Z and whether you see a difference with Gen Z and younger women. But before we get onto that, just even the thing you said about cohort sizes, I really want people to take away and think about, because, you know, you've thought very intentionally about that size of 7 and why it works, and thinking about the dynamic, etc. And I don't even think we think about that when we think about programs, and not even necessarily just women's programs. I think leadership programs generally, you know, or whether it's, you know, mentorship or sponsoring, I don't think we necessarily think consciously or intentionally about what is the optimal cohort size, particularly if we're trying to develop a community. I mean, I'm actually taking it on board because I'm doing more stuff around creating communities of employee network leaders. And as you're talking, I'm thinking that's a really good point. You know, cohorts of 7. How do I kind of do that? So definitely something to think about if you're wanting to create kind of sisterhood and relationships in the cohort, right?
That's it. Because the more of us that, and also there's something I often like to say in programs too. There are some of us that need to learn to stand back, and there are some of us that need to learn to step forward. And in a bigger group, that doesn't always happen, right? And really, I mean, like it takes integrity, and it's an invitation. Like, it's like, okay, honor, what's your work here? Is it to stand back or is it to step forward? And that's also, you will know deeply about this. That's also about really creating an energy of inclusion where because I think a lot of people who might identify as more introverted, like myself, I think my soul is actually very extroverted. I became quite introverted in my life, certainly in the way that I was showing up in the workplace, because I was afraid. Like, so like, actually, like, let's unpack. What do we mean? Some people, okay, yeah, you might be massively introverted, but a lot of us are holding back because we're afraid, and also sensitive and thoughtful. But my goodness, I want to hear from every voice in the room, right? So it's really trying to create that environment. And when the 7 is also just about what works in an exec, like, so my last role with BP, we were investing in and scaling energy businesses, right? So we were part of creating the leadership team and also looking at the board composition and how does that need to look at. So it's really through my own experience as an operator where I'm like, well,
Mhm.
that's kind of the perfect size, because you do want enough
Yeah.
people that you have different opinions. And if you've got like 4, we might already be, we'll be all probably drinking the Kool-Aid from one of the, like maybe we all went to school together, or if you think about founding teams, right? Like
Yeah.
maybe we look different, but maybe we're just the same thinking people in different bodies, right? That happens too. 7, you're like, to get a little bit of like difference, which I think is essential.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. Definitely something to think about. And then finally, and we've literally just got a few minutes, because I know both you and I've got to go, and I've got to literally go catch a plane, and you've got to be somewhere as well. But have you noticed any difference when it comes to younger? Oh, we've got a question. And we go into this question. Maybe I'll ask this question instead of going on to the Gen Z.
Actually,
okay.
Did we answer it? We kind of answered
I love the
it.
rule of 7 comment. Sorry to be that guy. Nyambi not being that guy. Is there data around the cohort of 7 aligning with the optimal exec team size, or is this based on your observations? Did you cover that already, Ruth?
Yeah, I think so. And it really is. It's me womaning it. It's me using my intuition and lived experience to go, hey, okay, I was in the people world for like 20 something years. And this is where I saw teams become most effective. And it's really just from my own, like, this is me placing a bet, right? This is me placing a bet with the universe and going, is what I.
Well, here's the thing that I just want to throw into this as well. If my husband were on this call, which he's not, but he's quite religious, and the number 7 comes up a lot in religion and spirituality in the universe, as do other numbers. Like, for example, the number 12 of being like, say, a perfect number. So, and there are 7 days in the week, right?
Yes.
And 12 months in the year. So I feel that, but it's a really good question, Nyambi. I'm going to come back to you on that. I'll maybe like Google it and see whether there is any science around it, because we know that there is science around numbers. So there is science around, for example, the number of 150 as being like the optimal size of like a division within an organization. And lots of people have talked about that and how culture starts to go awry once you get beyond those numbers and all sorts of things. So I'll look into it. It's a really good question, Nyambi. Let's finish up maybe with Gen Z if we've got time. Gen Z women, different to millennials or not? Your thoughts?
That's an interesting one. I think I love the leadership that the energy of youth brings, right? Where it's like, hang on, what are you saying is okay?
No,
that's not okay.
And the Gen Z is like, look, it's 5 o'clock, I'm going home.
No. So, I mean, we came up in a very different, like, I was so humble and subservient as a, I was so humble, like grateful. You need me to climb under the desk? I'll climb under the desk. You need me to do like whatever, right? So I think there's an energy in that. But are we as a society really honoring the nature of woman, though? Probably not. And are those people coming into organizations where they're set up to succeed? Probably not, right? And so I mean, I think all of us, it's a mission. I would love us all to be part of this collective mission of how do we create an environment where everybody can thrive and bring who they are out in the workplace and in the world, right? Because it all comes together, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
But yes, I do think, though, there's a fierceness and a different energy in younger humans, which I learn from, right? I'm like, absolutely. But I do think that there are still some missing pieces that keep us disconnected, because they're still coming up through the same school systems that we all did, right?
Yeah, and potentially a real mismatch in expectation. So I'm totally with you. I think young people more ambitious, more authentic, dare I say, as in, we've been saying for a long time, bring your whole selves to work. Young people are doing it, and sometimes sometimes we don't like what we're seeing, right? When the young people just show up as they want to show up, we're like, what are you doing? Why are you texting me to say that you're not going to be in the office today?
It's quite confronting when you're like, and actually that's also actually older generation people. That's on us to notice where we're being triggered by the audacity of the youth. And actually, I tell you what, a lot of my career tactics I learned from the audacity of men, white men in particular, right? Like, 'cause I was a recruiter for years, and the way they would negotiate with me, with like just expectation. I was like, is that a thing? Like, so part of what I learned came from observing others and like, wow, that's a confidence I wouldn't.
The audacity. I love that. The audacity. And good morning, Deirdre Labassier, whose name I just love saying. I could literally say it every day. How can I join at the end and still get nuggets of gold? Love this. Thank you. Ruth, thank you so much for being here. If you were just going to leave people with one tip today, you know, what would that tip be in terms of, you know, so for example, for women that are watching this maybe, or for women that are involved in like leading programs, what would your one tip be in terms of how they should be thinking about this work?
Well, my one tip for women overall would be embrace cyclicality, whatever that means for you, whatever season of life you're in, whether that's a season where you're bleeding or not. Sister Moon is in the sky. Let's pay attention to her. Let's cycle with her and embrace our cyclicality. And then, because what that then means is that you will realize that there are times in the month where you need to honor rest. And there are times in the month where you're like, I'm radiant and I'm alive. You know, like, but also like, that's where we learn to channel these different parts of ourselves in this magnificent way. But to all humans, what I would say is, you mentioned the authority gap. I talk a lot about the authenticity gap, the gap between who we really are and who we feel like we need to be in the world of work to succeed. And what I do with teams often is support humans to bridge that gap. So the work for us all, if we were all working on being our actual selves and making our own self our work, the world would be a very different place very quickly, where we're owning our stuff, but where we're also owning our magic and our fire and our passion and all of it. Then that's where I think we'll see the whole world come alive, where we're actually getting to be ourselves. But that means breaking apart systems as much as it means breaking apart these cages that we're putting ourselves in with the door open, right? So I'll stop there. I'll go on forever.
Absolutely amazing. Absolutely, mate. Honestly, Ruth, you know, this did not disappoint. I was looking forward to this so much. For anybody that hasn't met Ruth, honestly, Ruth is fire. Like, literally is fire. And you've probably just had a snippet of that today. Ruth, if people want to work with you and find out more about Bloom and Women Who Lead, where's the best place to connect with you and find you and find out more about you? And good morning, Emily.
Hi, Emily. Yes, LinkedIn is my second home, at least. LinkedIn is a great place to do that. But my website is ourtimetobloom.com. There's a section for women where you can read more about women's programs. There's a section called Bloom for Teens where you can read about more about the work I do with companies. So ourtimetobloom.com, or just Ruth Penfold on LinkedIn.
Amazing. Ruth, thank you so much. And to everyone that has watched and been here with us this morning, thank you so much. And if you're watching on the replay, thank you for taking 40 odd minutes out of your day to watch this. We
appreciate you.
We love it. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great weekend.